Coming to you from a portable microphone, this is Don't Get Me Started. This is a conversation about advertising. And here is your host, freelance creative director and creative circus department head, Dan Balser.
Yes, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I'm in beautiful, I don't know if we call this the Lower East Side or Chinatown. I think I'm sort of in the cusp, just south of Grand Street. I walked through a little bit of Chinatown. I'm not exactly sure where I am, but it is cool, it's gritty. It's the lower part of New York that has character to it, that is inspiring. And this morning I was watching an Adweek piece with my guest Scott, where he talked about how inspired he is by the rhythm and visuals of the city. I would also add the smells of the city. And I get back here to New York, and I am back in the womb. It is the most amazing feeling to be back walking the streets of New York, and it stimulates the brain. I don't know if I've talked about this on the podcast, but every time we would travel with my daughter when she was very young, we would come back to New York, and she would make some crazy leap in cognitive development. And I just think that there's something about new stimulation that, I know it's got to be science behind it, that encourages brain development. And New York is nothing but brain stimulation day to day to day. And it's just fun to be here. And it's such a cool space. So I'm sitting here in basically a railroad apartment, a very long, narrow studio space at a table in the back. The door's open. There is I'd say 65.7% chance someone's going to walk in during the conversation and just ask us what's going on. That's already happened twice. This is going to be, I hope, an organic, real, unscripted conversation. I'm sitting catty corner from Scott Carlson, who's wearing a white t-shirt. He's got a graying beard similar to mine, although much more robust. It looks like some green cargo pants. Courtney Ridgway, who's a PR person, sitting over in the corner, checking her emails on her phone. And that's the scene. We're sitting at a table, and you can hear the bounce off the white painted brick walls. Scott Carlson is a founder, CCO at Vans General Store. You knew that because that's the description of the episode. I didn't have to tell you that part. But what you don't know from the description is that he graduated from Art Center. After Art Center, he went to Deutsch. He was at Deutsch for 5 years before moving on to being a junior partner in GCD at TBWA's Chiat Day. He was an executive creative director at D-Rush, which is a Donnie Deutsch Russell Simmons joint, doing some very interesting. I think that might have informed him that there are more things that you can do in this business than traditional posters and print ads. He spent 3 years as a creative director at Mother, and in 2012, by the way, I want to say the first thing we're going to say when I'm done with this, congratulations on 5 years. 5 years ago, founded Vans General Store. Vans General Store, I'm going to read off of Scott's description of what Vans General Store is, because when I told friends that I was doing this podcast, I did not have a lot of people that knew who it was. The General Store is a creative collective, a modern agency where best-in-class creative and strategists incorporate their talents to make incredible advertising, brand content, films, and other high-quality narratives in service of brands. Think about this, people. This is what we do. We do what we do in service of brands. At Vans General Store, that was me, that was an ad-lib. That was an ad-lib there. At Vans General Store, we create master narratives in the form of giant story arcs that are built over time, carefully, consistently, to create far greater impact and momentum for our clients. A brand narrative that has consistently worked, improved, and explored not only captures imagination, but also resonates deeply with audiences, creating a more authentic, human brand experience. We believe most brands have not fully explored the possibilities of their narrative, and we're in the business of elevating brands to entirely new levels. That is pretty effing cool. Welcome to the little microphone. Thank you for letting me into your space.
Thank you for being here. And it's the Lower East Side.
It's the Lower East Side, okay.
Yep, so you are on Orchard Street, which is kind of the bottom edge of the Lower East Side. Canal is 2 blocks down, which will start to put you into Chinatown. Or you could go over 1 block and be into Chinatown.
Okay, so does Chinatown sort of bleed up, though, a little bit over there?
It bleeds up a little bit.
By the D train?
Yep, and up into Delancey and a little bit up into Soho area, Little. It's a fine line. They trickle.
Very cool.
But this is considered Lower East Side, and the tenement museum's up on the corner.
Okay. Yeah.
And so we constantly have 50 people out front looking at the building.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations on 5 years.
Thank you.
That's pretty damn cool.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been a fun 5 years, and we kicked off the agency. The very first project we did, the very first piece was 4 music videos for Bon Jovi.
Oh wow!
So as soon as we did that, and we created this trilogy, these 3 stories using 3 different songs off the album, with a whole social plan of the second part of the story doesn't get released till there's 1 million views.
Oh wow!
But really, it was about, hey, can you do some videos for Bon Jovi? I knew that we were doing the right thing. I knew that creating and making was exactly what Van's General Store was going to be.
That's really cool. And one of my notes when I was writing this intro was that this is a certain vision of the future. This is a certain variation. I spent yesterday at an educators summit, and there was a lot of talk about hacking digital and the future of the business, but there's a lot of different ways to get to the future. I was also reading something this morning about I'm going to say his name wrong. Naledi, is that his name? The newest hominid that was found. And they're saying that when you think about human evolution, it's not a tree. It's more like a river with little tributaries that come off, and some of them sweep back in. And predicting the future is sort of a fool's game anyway. But the idea of creating this content, I think, is a very, very cool way to think about it. And one of the questions I want to ask you, you know what, the noise is going to happen, listeners. Get used to it. It's just where we are. A lot of the stuff that I'm looking at that you guys did is these beautiful long form documentary style videos. What are the problems that those longer forms are solving for clients? How does a brief look for you guys, and what does it framing this sort of comparing? That's maybe an old school question to even ask. What problem is it solving? But what is the opportunity and what's the problem that those kind of executions solve? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I can tell you how we got to it. When we were at Mother, I have a creative director here with me, Blaise Cepas, who was one of my right hands at Mother. In our group, we had a little group called MoPro, about 30 people, with Michael Rose and Nick Kadner. And one of the original accounts, which actually built our department, was NBC Local News. And we had 10 cities, and we were charged with on-air promos. So we weren't actually the sexiest group inside of Mother for a little bit. And, I looked at it and thought I had an end goal that I wanted to reach. And I thought that the local news was really about the people that the local news affects. It wasn't about the anchors. It wasn't about these people with all the makeup sitting behind the desk. So I wanted to create a campaign that the end goal was the benefit of all the people and the people in the city, and thinking about all the millions of wonderful stories and people who build New York and who are affected by the news. So the first thing that we did was get the anchors from behind the desk and put them back on the street with the people, because they actually are all neighbors. They're, Chuck Scarborough and all those guys. They live right next to the people that they're talking to. So we ended up doing campaigns that started as kind of a tune-in campaign for the news that really evolved into stories about the city. And I am New York, and I am Los Angeles, and I am Chicago, and what that meant, what my role of being a communicator in New York City, what I give back to the city that gives to me.
Love that.
And so it built, and it became this huge national campaign. And the longer forms, and that's where we began building and crafting these things, just really became these interstitial and longer stories about some of the people we saw in the brand advertising. Yeah. And so it allowed them to tell their story. But the end goal is I wanted to create a half-hour television show about it. So cool. It just kept growing and growing until we had the films that built the television show. So I really worked backwards all the way from, I think we should have a half-hour television show that highlights the wonderful people.
That's really interesting. What is your compass? What's your creative compass? Like, what is it that drives you? Like, what's the thing that excites you from your craft or your process? Like, what these are different questions.
They're totally different questions, but it's really, really hard for me, and especially our agency, to define that.
You, personally.
But personally, it's just making stuff. So I have more of a fine art background. When I was going to Art Center, it was more about fine art. I had wonderful friends in the graphic and advertising department, but my real focus was art. So for me, it's just about making things. And I had the absolute most wonderful teacher in advertising on the planet in Kirk Souter, right? So when I went to, Deutsch was my first real gig in advertising, and Kirk was so patient with me coming in from the outside world, not understanding what a brief was, what strategy was, any of that stuff. Even if the project was done and I was, limping behind the race, he took the time to help, train me to a certain extent.
That's really cool.
To get stuff. Even if the idea wasn't right, he helped me take this random weird idea and make sense of how it could work for a client if it were a right thing. So
is that an ongoing struggle for you? Or I shouldn't say that. Not struggle. Is that something you're sort of aware of? That sort of your process challenges. Okay, good. This is a really cool thing. Can we connect the dots?
Not anymore. Again, I think I had so much help, and I had so many amazing clients, right? Because you're only as good as your client. It doesn't matter what brand you are. You're only as good as your client. That I was able to actually create some of these, more conceptual sized pieces, but servicing the client, as you said in the beginning, that is the main goal. That is goal number one. If you're doing wacky, weird, if you're doing this stuff just for the sake of saying, look what I made, then it's not really what you go do that on the side, right? Go have your gallery show, go do it.
Please do, yeah.
But one of the earlier things that I did at Chiat Day was a.
Hold on, can I say some? Can I write down Chiat Day and go back to that for a second? I want to go back to your NBC thing at Mother. Yeah. Was that because I'm really interested in this, because I think that I'm not so far removed from agency life that I don't remember what it was like when I got a brief, and I just think that it's difficult to say, hold on, let's step back and let's tell these guys stories. Was there an epiphany moment, or was there a feeling you're like, wait a minute, we can do another ad, but the really interesting thing is these people. Like, how were you able to sell that in, and how was that? I don't know. I'm just kind of having a hard time. It's so easy to sit here after the fact and say, so we did this great film. We did Chuck Scarborough's Neighborhood and talked to him about his personal life. I just think that's something that I don't know how a young person in an agency. First of all, you got to break apart what you think advertising is, and then you got to be able to sort of sell that in. So the first part of that, breaking apart the agency part, was a natural thing for you then, right? Because you're just a storyteller and an artist.
Yes. Doing advertising for a long time, working, Nestle and P&G, big brands. I understand the role that we all play, but in this case, I think part of it was the culture of Mother, right?
Yes.
And I believe it was the strength of the people that were in our group, and our group was built off of music composers, writers, editors, line producers were more of the account person than there was an account person. Brilliant mind of Michael Rose putting it together, and Nick Cadner keeping it together. The way that it got done was I accomplished the job of doing the brand tune-ins, telling the story about the people. And it took baby steps, right? First, we convinced the anchors that we wanted to do a little story about them, just a personal story, get them driving in the car, sitting in a park, talking. Then we put them in a spot that had 5 other people. What was happening at the time was they're all our crews. We were running around the country shooting these things. When we found somebody that was particularly interesting, we hung out with them a little bit longer and shot more of them, right? Cool. So we were constant. Since we were the creators of the idea, we knew where it could go and what it would do.
That's a really great lesson, too.
So it wasn't about trying to convince the client right away, hey, I've got this grand vision. It was solve the problem at hand.
Great.
And keep going. And what happened was, since we had our own crew always, it was, all right, let's go cut 4 3-minute films about these guys over here, the guys who raise the pigeons on the roof, the guy who is the original Dogtown and Z-Boy guy, Skip from in LA, and then let's take these films to the client, show the client, and tell the client, you know what, we shot this with the same budget. We didn't. This isn't an extra.
Yeah, that's really, really, really cool. I noticed that actually in the Chevy films that there was a lot of stuff that looked like it was shot. We don't know yet exactly how we're going to use this bit, but there's pieces that felt like perfectly fit in the story that was being told that weren't the same place or time. That's really cool.
Yeah, it was. We started to develop a style. It's familiar, I think, in most cases, but we started to develop a style when we were doing the NBC stuff, which gave us the courage and the confidence to say, yeah, we can go shoot 14 films for Chevy, right? We're not, RSA or another big production company. We can do it. Those are all our own guys, right?
That's really cool.
But we understood storytelling and the small little narratives in storytelling and the way we were shooting things, and I wanted it to be honest. And we talked to, we worked with 15 different DPs, right?
Wow.
But it was all over the country. But we had
for NBC.
For NBC.
Yeah.
But we had our core favorites that did
Right.
everything, and those are the guys who shot Cadillac. In fact, I'm sorry, Chevy. One of the DP directors on Chevy just shot our Cadillac movie, which was brilliant, Lance. Anyways,
it's beautiful.
It's
amazing.
Yeah, thank Lance for that. It was great, and Liev, my partner Liev, for bringing that.
What's Lance's last name?
Edmonds.
Okay,
Yep.
really, really nice.
Beautiful, wonderful person to work with too. But I wanted everything to be real, and I didn't want snap zooms, and I didn't want long lenses, and it was kind of one of those things where if you can't see it with your eye, don't shoot it.
There's a great shot. There's a great little visual trope happening in the Chevy spots where it seems like a lot of the characters will be placed center and still.
Yes,
Like
with
an
dialogue
establishing
over the
wide, like an establishing wide shot that adds a consistency and sort of a familiarity, and it doesn't really ask you to think too hard. It's just so you're there watching. It's very voyeuristic. It's a really cool shot.
Yeah, there's part of it where when you're doing these interviews, people are always looking to the left or right of the camera, right? Or to the person doing the interviews. So since you're the viewer is watching them all the time talk, we wanted to put these portraits in of them looking at you.
Right. Yeah, that's cool.
To create that dynamic and that connection back, and that was kind of one of our signatures. I've seen it with other people. I like to think it was one of our signatures, but we like really wide shots, and we like these portraits, and then tight shots. And,
it's really cool. So
that was part of it.
I interrupted you when you were talking about Scheid. Do you remember where we were?
Oh yeah, no, it was something about how you solve problems in the early days of Chiat, working with the Seagram's brands. The old rule was, it was a gentleman's agreement that the liquor brands wouldn't run television commercials. It wasn't a law. People used to think that was a legal thing. From what I was told at the time, it was a gentleman's agreement. So Seagram's said, you know what? Let's make a commercial. We had shot some films for Absolute, but Chivas was like, let's do a 30-second spot for Chivas, and we'll run it in North Dakota at 4 a.m. and we've done it.
Right.
And I looked at the numbers, the budget, right? It was like $500,000 when, budgets were super sexy back then. And
that was small, right? That was small.
That was small.
Okay, just for clarity.
For clarity.
For clarification.
But good enough, right? So kind of looked at it and went back into the meeting, and it just, a couple of weeks later, and said, I understand what you guys want to do, but I have another idea. And we built a sculpture. We built a public art piece that went up in the Miami airport in the international section right outside first class of American Airlines. And it was really hard to get advertising in an airport because it sold forever, but by building this giant video sculpture, it had 12 monitors in it. It was two people sitting at a table having cocktails, and all the body parts were different monitors, and the bottle and the table was a different monitor, and there was a different monitor for a flower vase in the front, and it was like every time a hand went in, a different signature cocktail came out. So
cool.
we hit all our advertising objectives,
right.
But it was a fine art piece. It was a public sculpture, and it had a huge Chivas logo on the box. It was encased in a giant glass box, and it was just like, art sponsored by Chivas. So it was an advertising campaign disguised as public art
installation sponsored by the brand.
Yes, in the Miami.
And there's some earned media happening.
And it ran every day, 24/7 for a year.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I did that. So that was one of the early things of like, look, if you can actually solve the problem and you can do the goal. So, I mean, the impressions on that, far surpassed, and I know that they were trying to do the 30-second film thing, but I also think it might have been somebody had some extra money in fourth quarter.
That is really, really, really cool. All right, so I want to go back to talk about the Chevy and the Cadillac and the films. Do you have a concern of sort of having a style or a thing that you do that agencies are going to come in? I want you to do this thing for us.
Yes. Yeah. We like doing all different types of things. We happen to be really good at these kind of vignette-y, human nature, honest stories. They're beautiful. We haven't brought this up yet, but my partner in the business is Liev Schreiber. And when we were working on, this is how Liev and I've known Liev for a long time, but this is how we became working partners. When we were working on the Chevy pieces, I would show him, like, hey, here's our cut. And he would instantly look at it and say, you need to do this, and you need to move this here, move this here. You've got this part of the story arc too soon. You need to close it with this. Awesome. I would move it. And just like watching it, he made him instantly better in a nanosecond. That's what he does, right?
It's amazing. That's his business.
That's his business. He's a writer, director, producer, actor. Like it was
a voice talent. He's a formidable voice talent.
So it was just second nature to him. That's how, and so we have that on our side. We have one of the best storytellers on the planet to helping these stories.
So in other words, it's not even the thing you do; it's the story that the brand needs to tell, or the story that connects it somehow. So sure, it's okay if that's what they come to us for, because we're going to do what's right for them.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Excellent.
I mean, and then the second film we did was Felt, which was our.
That's some weird shit, dude.
That's some weird shit. But that was built on the back of having all your own guys running out all over the country all the time, working their asses off, shooting. We shot.
All right, we're gonna hold off for 1 second. Hold on.
I believe that we shot 2,200 original pieces in the time that we had Moped Mother.
Wow.
So our guys were hustling, and it wasn't that we built books, we built tabletop books, we did print ads, we did billboards, we did all that kind of stuff. But we were a group going out all the time, making these things, and so to kind of break the lull, and these guys all worked all the time. They liked it. They liked making things. We said, well, why don't we make a short film? Everybody stays with each other, and we got all these things. So Felt came about. Yeah. We wanted to make a short, and again, it's just kind of the culture of all the people working together, the different types of minds. It's not just a bunch of advertising guys who,
that's cool.
Like that world. These are guys who are filmmakers and they're writers, and they want, to them there's no off button. You don't stop shooting until the battery dies.
Right.
That's
huge.
And that's where Felt came from.
That's cool. Listeners, you can check this stuff out, vgsny.com. That's where all this stuff is living. This is going to sound like a naive question. Should be obvious, but I want to talk a little bit about this 14 films for Chevy, right? Mm-hmm. So what's the process of doing the research and get on the ground to find the people to be in these films, and who the producers doing this kind of legwork, and what's that process look like?
All right, so I'm going to flip this question on you.
Bring it.
So when we would work on NBC, there was a lot of research involved, and we had amazing producers. Mm-hmm. We're working. There's many to name.
I just want the listeners to know what we're talking about, because I'm thinking most of them have it. So there's a series of 14 films in a town called Bridgeville, Pennsylvania, and there's an episode 2 or 3 maybe about Carlson Chevrolet, the oldest still operating Chevy dealership in the world.
Yeah.
There's one with a hardware store, one with a steel fabricator. Really intimate, little local stories.
Yeah.
And it's a remarkably addictive series. So that, just for context for the listeners that don't know.
Sure. So for NBC, there was a lot of research done to find the right people to make an interesting group and curate. So that they had a great pod. Mm-hmm. Bridgeville was a whole different story. So Bridgeville was created for their Chevy Centennial, right? Okay. So Carlson is 100 years old, Chevy was 100 years old, and that's how we found them. That's how we ended up in Bridgeville. Yeah. As we were working through budgets and working through brand and working through GM and doing all these things, we weren't allowed to talk to anybody in Bridgeville.
Not convenient.
To build our stuff.
Right.
And
that's not convenient.
We had Jill Silverman and Diana Frame were our producers, and we drove out one day, did a location scout, and came back. And basically we were, it was like a countdown clock. And finally, talking to GM, we were like, look, in order to make the centennial date, your birthday, we have to shoot in 2 days. We have to, or we won't get it done.
Oh, in 2 days? We have to be there 2 days from now.
Yeah,
okay.
Shooting. And so we got the crews together. We got in our 2 vans. We drove to Bridgeville, and we waited. And we got the answer. And
sitting there in Bridgeville.
At
a diner waiting, checking your phones.
Yep. Everybody, at motels. And our two producers went out into the world and put that together.
It's awesome.
Like that. And because the town is so tight, one person took you to another person, took you to another person,
That's
took you
cool.
to another person.
That's never going to happen again, ever. Never has, never will. That's really, really, really cool.
And we, everything was like it happened to be. The homecoming game was the last day we were shooting at the local high school.
Players running,
that had
cheerleaders.
That had a female, had a girl hunter on the team, which was unique. Like everything we needed.
And stuff you never dreamed you'd get showed up. Is that an ad? Here's a question. Is that an ad? Do people see that? Like, who's the target for those? And I'm watching this thing thinking, I don't live a complete hermit life, right? I hadn't seen any of that. I don't know if I want to sell you out and say no one sees their work, but like so much genius stuff is so limited. So where did that come out, and who would have seen it?
So there was a website built for it that was all about kind of local.
So we have people just outside just talking. So and listeners, I heard the truck backing up. I hear the talking outside. This is an open gallery space and retail space that we're recording in. So you are with us right now. We did one of these with Jerry Graff last year. And Jerry's office is a half a block away from a fire department. And he has single pane windows. And if you heard that episode, you know what I'm talking about. So it had its own website.
So it had its own website. It was geolocated, and it went out to Chevy owners. It was a present from Chevy back to Chevy owners.
Really, really cool. Oh, that's great.
Just about like, thank you for being part of the Chevy family.
Love
and
that.
Chevy is such a deep, wonderful American brand that it was, we needed a bunch of Chevy cars to show up, and the Calusis got on the phone, and we had, a one-day parade of classic Chevys from within 100 miles.
That's a great episode, too, with all the guys with their cars. It's really cool.
Yeah.
So another project, I wanted to talk a little bit more about some of your projects, and I want to ask you some personal questions. So this is another really cool one. Minted.
Yes.
Minted 50. So Minted is a website for people to sell their own personal art. Is that basically a way to summarize it?
Website is a crowdsourced design outlet. So what they're mainly known for are wedding invitations and greeting cards.
Okay.
Right? You send your family picture in, you get back with a happy holidays.
Right. So,
but you get, as a consumer, you get to work directly with the designer. So there's some incredibly talented emerging artists and very well-known artists that are in the Minted community. So it's basically a giant crowdsource.
So it's like applied Etsy.
Yes, it's different than Etsy, but
it's applied to like a specific.
and there's collaboration.
So you guys did in 50 days, 50 original creative projects to explore the playful spirit of creativity. And let me just say, without sounding too like ass kissy, I just think that the solutions are so cool. Like, I'm looking at your work last night, and I'm seeing, I saw a couple ads. A couple ads for a drink, I think, for a soft drink or something.
Yeah, this Sierra Mint, we launched Sierra Mints.
Those are cool. Those are great. Those are good. This is really cool. This is like, and it's live in a way, right? These are like original things happening day to day.
One of the challenges we have with Minted is that most people know it as the greeting card, wedding invitation place. They do original art as well. And they will curate your home, and you can send them pictures of your walls, and they'll help within their community of helping you find art and sizing it, scaling it. They're really amazing, and they do like fabrics that you can use to make pillows, like textiles and lampshades, and you can find a favorite designer that you absolutely love, or a painter, and say, I want to apply this design to 4 lampshades and a body of pillows. Nobody really knows about that side of Minted. So one of the things that we wanted to do was, let's do one project a day for 50 days that really kind of highlight collaboration, challenge, and design. And that's what this is. And it just ended. It was awesome. One of my very favorite pieces was street photography. That's selling him short. Daniel Arnold is an amazing photographer. What
did you stop yourself from saying? Street photographer?
Yeah, I was going to say street photographer. He's a street photographer.
What does that mean, street photographer?
He shoots life.
Right.
He's like, you can follow him on Instagram. I don't know. He's got like 150,000 followers.
Cool.
And he's actually stepped in for Bill Cunningham, the famous photographer, and shot the Met Gala the other night. Anyways, Daniel went into New York City and found Bigfoot.
What does that mean?
We found Bigfoot in New York City, and Daniel found him. So
In the park, I hope?
he was in a restaurant in a park, using the phone,
if he's
drinking some water, shopping. Like
Starbucks.
we found Daniel found Bigfoot in the park.
Can I go back and ask you a question? When you say street photographer, you mean not a well-known professional photographer? Is that what you mean? Like
No,
he's
I
a
mean
self-made guy.
No, somebody who actually shoots the street.
Okay,
who?
So explain what you mean by found Bigfoot?
One of the challenges we had. So every project we did had to be done in a day. And we wanted to we wanted to create a story about Bigfoot in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And so
That's cool.
So Daniel shot, I don't know, what is this, like 50 shots of Bigfoot in the city.
That's awesome.
There's 5 here in the show that are being sold. So everything in the show is sold and goes to RX Arts, which is a charity for
That's awesome.
children's
Where can
hospital.
listeners see the work now?
Minted.com/50.
50.
Yeah,
Very
and then there's a minted 50 hashtag on Instagram. But the Daniel Arnold stuff was awesome, and Vice picked it up. So Vice did a little story about Daniel finding Bigfoot in New York City.
That's awesome, dude.
So that's when we start talking about earned media for clients
and forming culture. That's really
and forming culture. So now there's there's an Instagram, Bigfoot in New York. So it's Bigfoot_in_New York. That every day there's a sighting of Bigfoot.
Love that very much.
So we'd like to keep the popular culture going and find other photographers to pick up the pace. Andy Spade is going to be one of the photographers, and I don't know if anybody. Famous old ad guy. He's not old, but he's a famous ad guy. But his Instagram art is absolutely stunning. He's got a book coming out.
That's really cool.
A week of it. But in the photographer in their own style will go find Bigfoot, and there it is, right behind you.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm looking at the screen right behind me. So, Van's General Store launched a juice and fruit restaurant, published an art book, has a TV show. I have a question that listeners are wondering. How do you guys hire? Do you hire?
Oh, yes.
Are you a collective? Do you have staff? I mean, we're sitting in here. This isn't even an office. So, if someone wants to work for you, let's say a junior is just completely fired up listening to this conversation, how would they go about working with you?
The best thing I can remember is, and I don't know if it was Stacy Wall or Hank Perlman who said this back in the old days of Deutsch, was if you want to get hired at Deutsch, send Donnie a portfolio full of sand. And that kind of stuck for a long time. Mm-hmm. Plus, Donnie hired all of us, and it was a great time. When I look at people coming in here, Blaze, the person we talked about earlier, he was at JWT. He had a short film in his portfolio on his site that was a film he made with his dad, and it's basically his dad stealing bicycles in the neighborhood. And I was like, he was making stuff, right? And I was like, okay,
that's more important.
Yes,
than the fact that it's a film is the fact that he made something that he wasn't asked to make.
Right, and it was good. And usually
when I talk
to writers, I want to know, what are you writing that's not advertising?
Yeah.
What are creative people? What do you do? So I've been doing this long enough. So 2 of the writers we actually had at Mother Productions at MoPro, turned out to be 2 of the best writers I've ever worked with on the planet. One was a digital producer, started at Mother as a digital producer, and the other one started as a account person. Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about you've been some different places.
Yep.
Some good. Talk a little bit about the various cultures you've been in. What were some of the things that let's keep a simple, very direct question. What are some of the things you picked up from agencies that you want to make sure that you hold on to as part of your mantra and your vision? Mm-hmm. And what are some of the things that you've seen at other experiences that you just want to absolutely never have here?
Culture is everything. And understanding, I think, of people and their values is everything. And the opportunity for people to have a chance, just talking about, what we were just saying about the writers, there's a lot of situations where unless you have a portfolio, unless you went to ad school, unless you like a creative director's not even going to talk to you, let alone a recruiter in an agency.
Right.
I've just, I've been doing this long enough that I believe that, just the same way Kirk helped me in the beginning, I understand how to do advertising. I just want really, really smart people around me. And, Mother has a fantastic culture. Starting at Deutsch for Donnie, I know that everybody sees Donnie as this on-air, celebrity for what he is. When I was working with him,
I have a different memory of him.
Phenomenal. Just absolutely phenomenal. He was so kind and generous. His dad, I was fortunate to work with.
I have heard that a lot, actually.
David was a huge help. Worked with great people, the Deutsch was, back in those days, it was Dave Baldwin.
Okay.
Hank Perlman, right? Hungry Man, Stacy Wall, of course. Paul Goldman, Eric McClellan, Kirk. And then there's a couple other people who aren't really, Max Jerome, who aren't directly in the game still, but are like just uber talent somewhere else. My original, and then my partner Tom Gadisi, who's I don't know what his exact title is.
What was it? You were enabled, you were supported, what were the things that made it a great place? They hired other great people? I mean...
Yeah, I think it was...
And if I'm a junior looking to work somewhere, how can you gauge that on an interview?
You can't.
Okay.
You can't. I don't think you can gauge it. I think you can look at agencies and look at the work and get a sense of what the work is, and I think you can, understand, word on the street about, what an agency is. And kind of go from there. I mean,
you don't want to talk about bad stuff.
No.
What could make something go south?
I have had, there was one experience in my storied career here that wasn't great, and it's bad. It's bad karma. It's bad people, and I don't mean not talented. It just means like people who aren't good. Right,
They're possessive.
They're
territorial.
All of those things. I would just say not kind.
Can I say? Can I ask you why I want to talk about this? Because this is the thing, right? We're talking to Scott Carlson. This guy's clearly done really cool, doing awesome shit, right? Great resume. Not everybody has a good career, and not everybody has good experiences. And it's an illusion to assume that you've walked up steps every step of the way. And I don't think it's a fair representation for a young person to say that they've fucked up and they've screwed their entire career if they go take a bad job or have a bad experience. That's part of the chemistry that makes you who you are now.
True. So, fair enough. One of my jobs...
I'm not forcing you to... You don't have to talk about it.
No. I just... I think it's a situation where you aren't happy.
Yeah, that's good.
And the people that are around you aren't nice. And they're not kind. And there's... like crazy politics going on. You might not even know what some of the politics are until much later, right?
That's interesting, yeah. And some stuff is universal, but things like this is not universal.
Yeah, there's there's bad people in the world.
Right.
And there's bad people in every business.
Well, I just mean there's also frustrations. Stuff gets killed and stuff gets changed, and that's not necessarily a reason to run away from a job. When you're working with people who are making you feel shitty, it's not a good situation.
Yeah, because you're not at your best, and but it changed everything, right?
Yeah.
That situation changed everything. And, I still think very highly of a lot of the people that were there. There's some people there that will be my friends forever.
That's great.
And
we did not name the agency, by the way, in the intro. So don't go back and listen to the beginning, try to figure out where that was. It wasn't named. It's not important.
It's not important. But part of it was I had my son. And I realized at a certain point in this situation that I can't be this guy that I am right now, emotionally, mentally, and
be there for him.
Come home to him. I can't be that guy that I was in that office at home. And unfortunately, that's part of what it was. It really made me and allowed me to say, you know what? I want to get back to, I want to do the most creative things possible that are right and smart, because I want my son to see these things that dad does. I don't want him to see me doing some classic standard television ads that are on daytime TV, and I'm coming home and I'm gone for 3 months because I'm shooting this thing, and I want him to see all the cool stuff and have the fun. And that was what Mother allowed me to get back to, kind of the beginning, but as a mature person.
That's really cool.
And then Van's General Store. My son is Van, so the place is named after him. It's Van's General Store.
That answers my question was how much has parenting affected you as a creative and vice versa?
It's huge.
It's big, right?
It's huge. It's huge. It's I'm not young anymore, and my choices go.
I think we're the same age. I think I may be 1 year older.
27.
Yeah. I just turned 28, so that's cool.
Okay, so you're older.
I was just talking to a coworker yesterday about how my job has made me a better parent, and being a parent makes me a better mentor and instructor to my students. So let's talk more about you for a second. There's 2 questions remaining, and I know that you were listening to the wrong Don't Get Me Started. Some fucking people started a podcast with the same name, and they have more connections than I do. So the good thing about that is you haven't heard either of these questions, so I can blindside you with this one. What personal trait of yours, what is it about Scott Carlson personally? What do you think it is about you that's helped you be successful to this point?
I think there's a couple things, but I think and my wife might agree with this, is multiple personalities.
Does that mean you're a chameleon, or does that mean that you're
that means
you have a diagnosis?
That's my wife's diagnosis. No, it means that I find a way to adapt to my situation.
Awesome.
Right? Sometimes it's not great. Right? Sometimes there's the dark side, but that, thank God, hasn't come out in a very long time. But I believe that you can do anything. I really believe you just keep going and take the opportunity. And
so optimism.
I'm throwing my wife under the bus on this one. It's like, I'm just so sick of your optimism. And I think it's a Southern California thing.
Right.
And she's not. She loves me very much. It's a Southern California thing. It's a beach thing. It's like, it's going to be all right. It's going to be good. And then I think the other thing is I just really like making stuff.
Yeah, that's really, really cool.
I really like making creative stuff. And I think the Minted 50 was just, I just wanted to make all 50, I wanted, we have,
because it was all 50 different people.
It was 50 different people. Yeah. And I mean, we have got we have chop saws and drill things and
so cool.
All kinds of stuff down in the basement to make stuff.
That's awesome.
And, when we did the Vespa campaign, we literally made everything. We sat in here, Laura and Blaze and myself, made everything. We bought mirrors and parking garages. And
how cool is that you're getting paid for that?
I know.
It's so amazing.
I know.
I had lunch today with a friend who's actually, it's funny you said NBC. He works at NBC in the advertising promotion, and he said that he said he doesn't feel like he's at work when he's at work. He said, I don't feel like I'm coming to work. He loves what he's doing. And it's just, I said, it makes me warm inside to hear you say that. It made me feel so good that he's happy.
Yeah.
All right, last question. Knowing what you know now, if you could go back to the day you graduated from Art Center, what would you whisper in young Scott's ear?
So I'm going to correct that one. So I didn't.
Okay, good.
I didn't graduate.
Okay.
So
the day you left.
So the day I left, yeah. So I went to school, did my fine arts, came to New York, fell in love. I was able to meet Milton Glazier, Dwayne Michaels, all these other artists, and a couple of the teachers in school said, "You just need to go." It wasn't like you're going to get a better education for the rest of
for life.
Yeah, and so that was one of the big decisions that propelled me to New York without knowing a single person, and
wow,
I came with a girl, and the girl went home.
Was there anything that you've learned along the way that you kind of wish you'd had a compass, or are you happy with the sort of the trips and falls and experiences you've had?
I am 100% happy with the trips and the falls, all of them, even the bad, even the job that wasn't as good as the others. I mean, every single one of these, all the people along the way, timing, help, talent, fun. The city, like you said, when you got here, I grew up in San Diego, and every day is the same day, and it's beautiful, probably the most beautiful place on the planet. The majority of the people I grew up with are still there.
What was that movie the utopian movie with what was that movie? No, there's somewhere. It's like it doesn't feel real. This place feels real, and you even mentioned the weather on that too. Like you don't know, what you could be walking in, and the weather. There's something weird about the way the light hits a window that changes your entire consciousness, your entire process of interpreting things. It's really interesting.
Seasons,
the smells, everything.
But yeah, no, I love it. I do wish. And so I didn't take the advertising courses at Arts Center, so I don't know if it ever gets to this. But when you're first trimester, you do take an advertising and a design and an illustration. You do the gamut. I would think, knowing most of the people that have come in through here, through advertising, not through Vans General Store, it's kind of the lack of understanding of the partnership of what each role is, and I don't just mean the copywriter and the art director. I mean the value of the strategist. The strategist is huge. Your friend, huge. And a good account person is your friend, huge. And that group, you're all one big group unit.
Right, huge. I will say I've done a lot of these conversations, and I tend to a lot of them, 10 years worth, and the people who tend to name the people that they cross paths with and worked with are the kind of people that you want to work with. Like you've done that throughout this entire conversation. You've named names in a way that is respectful and loving, and I think that's what says a lot about you.
Honestly, at the end of the day, if it wasn't for Andy Spade, my last name drop here.
I'm not saying your name dropping famous people either.
I wouldn't be in the business. I was broke, being evicted from an apartment. He was a good friend. Long time ago, he's sitting in the park in Soho, and he was like, "I can get you $100 a day coming into the studio at Christian Bond and Bond."
That's great.
And I walked in and I saw what advertising was about, and I saw how they solved problems, and it was a big puzzle, and it was all conceptual. And then 2 weeks later, I got a call from Donnie to come meet him, and that was it.
That's
and
awesome.
So I don't get to have Vans General Store without Kirk and Andy.
That's inspiring stories in through a different door. I just think that's just amazing. Thank you so much for doing this.
You're welcome.
Listeners, make sure you check out all the work. VGSNY.com. There's already a link on the Facebook page, which by now I'm hoping you've already liked. If not, it's free of charge to go ahead and like that Facebook page. Everything will be served to you automatically into your news feed. It's facebook.com/DGMS podcast. You can reach Scott at hello@VGSNY.com. That again is hello@VGSNY.com. You can reach me as always at Dan's podcast at Mac.com, where I live. Courtney, thanks for arranging this. She sat silently in the corner checking her phone. Scott, great meeting you, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Listeners, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Till then, bye.
Hello? How you doing? Next door.
Someone just walked in with a food delivery for some other place.